Hi. Welcome back to my channel. As you all know, we are reading Sign of Ikshvaku. In our previous video, we completed chapter 11. Let's start chapter 12. Ram was still bedridden, awoken by the doctor in the second prahar for the next dose of medicine. He looked around the room and found Lakshman dressed up in a formal dhoti and angavastram. His saffron angavastram had the Suryavanshi sun embellished on it. Someone called him, and he turned to the left and saw his father, attired in formal finery. Dasharath was sitting on his travel throne, and his crown was placed on his head. Ram wished him good morning. Dasharath nodded and said, "It will indeed be a fine morning." Dasharath then turned towards the tent entrance and called for an attendant. A guard came running, to whom he commanded to let the nobles in. Within minutes, all the nobles entered and gathered in a semicircle around the emperor. He then commanded that he wished to see his son. The nobles were surprised by the tone of authority in the emperor's voice. Dasharath then looked directly to Ram and said, "Rise." Lakshman rushed over to help Ram, but Dasharath stopped him. The assemblage waited and watched Ram, severely weakened, struggling to rise himself. Then he stood on his feet and hobbled toward his father. He saluted slowly. Dasharath, with his eyes locked with his son, inhaled deeply and commanded, "Kneel." Ram was in utter disbelief, overwhelmed. His eyes started to well up. Dasharath's voice softened and he said, "Kneel, my son." Ram, struggling with emotions, supported a table close to his hand and with massive labor went down on one knee, bowing his head, awaited for the call of destiny. Dasharath spoke and his voice reverberated inside the royal tent. "Rise, Chandra, protector of the Raghu clan." All the people in the tent gasped, and the moment Dasharath raised his head, there was utter silence. Ram still had his head bowed. He didn't wish to show anybody that he was crying. A few moments later, he spoke in a calm voice. "May all the gods of our great land continue to protect you, my father." Dasharath's eye had a different glint, and he had a hint of a smile when he turned towards the nobles and said, "Leave us." Mrigasya attempted to say, "Your Majesty, but he was interrupted. All Dasharath said was, "What part of leave us did you not understand, Mrigasya?" He immediately apologized and led everybody out. Dasharath, Ram and Lakshman were left alone in the tent. Dasharath, with massive effort, rose from his throne. He resisted Lakshman's offer of help. However, once in his feet, he took hold of Lakshman and hobbled over to Ram. Ram too, all weakened, slowly rose to his feet. His face was undefinable. His eyes were filled with emotion. Dasharath held Ram's shoulder and said, "Become the man that I could have become, the man that I did not become. Make me proud." Both Ram and Dasharath had tears in their eyes, and all he said was, Make me proud, my son." There was massive turmoil in the courts. Everybody was curious as to what happened. Dasharath had to move out of Kaikeyi's wing in the Ayodhya palace. Kaikeyi's continuous bickering and forceful questions as to why he suddenly made Ram the crown prince forced Dasharath to move out. He decided to completely move to Kaushalya's wing along with his personal stuff. Kaushalya was confused. She suddenly had regained her status, but she was careful as to how he should react to this new changes. She was scared that this good fortune might not last. Ram's brothers, however, were delighted. Bharat and Shatrughan returned from Branga once they received words. Roshni had decided to join them as well. Bharat congratulated him with an embrace. Shatrughan said he deserved it. Roshni was confident that he surely did deserve it. Roshni also went to Guru Vashisht to inform him of everything, and also brought news that crime has reduced in Ayodhya, all because of Ram. Lakshman was the happiest, enthusiastic. However, Ram was feeling embarrassed. Roshni was truly happy that despite all the political turmoil in Ayodhyan court, all the princes shared a healthy bond among each other. The kingdom had a future, she knew it. Roshni patted Ram on his shoulder and said that she has to go. Ram inquired, "Go where?" To which Roshni informed that she was going to Saraya. She held a medical camp in that village once a month. This month it's Saraya. Ram decided to send some bodyguards with Roshni as the village of Saraya is not safe. Roshni smiled and said that there is nothing to be worried about. Criminal activities have reduced since Ram. Ram replied that he has not completely achieved that safety, but he is trying. Roshni noticed that Ram was still wearing her rakhi. She affirmed him that there is nothing to worry and that it was just a day's trip. She will be back by nightfall. Her assistants were accompanying her. They will go give the villagers free medicines and treatment. Bharat was listening to this conversation and made a comment that Roshni is a good woman, to which Roshni smiled and replied that she is. Later in the afternoon, Lakshman was busy honing his skills. He was the finest rider in Ayodhya. He has been practicing various forms of horse riding to make it advantageous during battles. He has chosen a spot far away from the city on the sheer cliffs into the rapids of the Sarayu. He was trying dangerous maneuvers with this horse near the edge of the precipice. The magnificent beast was responding instantly to Lakshman's every move. Such thunderous were its movement that the rare hooves left mark on the ground. Lakshman was really enjoying and appreciating his horse. Once done with his practice, he decided to go home along with his horse. He was riding through the woods when he saw a grave meeting going on, which he loved eavesdropping. Guru Vashisht was engrossed in a serious discussion with that mysterious Naga. The Naga and Guru Vashisht were talking about some failure. The Guru has returned to Ayodhya after an unexplained absence. They have failed in something, and this failure will affect something. Vashisht did not clearly say things, and he stopped mid-sentence because he thought he heard a sound. The Naga inquired, "What is it?" Vashisht said, Did you hear something? To which the Naga denied. Once again they resumed their discussion. They were talking about Prince Ram. And the Naga asked Vashisht that, do you know, your friend is on his way, seeking him. Vashisht said he knows. The Naga then asks, what do you intend to do? Vashisht says, what can he do? It will be Ram who needs to resolve everything. All of a sudden there was the sound of a twig snapping. The Naga decided he'd better go. He quickly mounted his horse, looked at Vashisht, and with permission, left. Vashisht folded his hands into a namaste and said, go with Lord Rudra, my friend. And the Naga rode away. Roshni was in the village of Saraya, patiently attending all the villagers who have gathered. His last patient was a child who had had a sprain in his heels, and she assured that it will heal in a day or two. She carefully explained the child to stay home and let the foot heal. She was good with children. She had a very generous nature. But she was done for today, and it was her time to leave. So she stood up and asked the village chief that she needs to be excused. She would be leaving. The chief said that it was really late and it will become nightfall when she reaches Ayodhya. The city gates will be shut. Roshni, however, decided that no, she must leave, and she was determined she would make it. Her mother would be waiting. There is a celebration planned. The chief left the decision on her and thanked her for her generous behavior. Roshni walked up to her horse and mounted swiftly, ready to leave. Her assistants gathered all the medical supplies and mounted their horses. Once Roshni signaled, the trio rode out of the village. Few moments later, 8 horse-mounted men appeared to the chief's door from the nearby village, Isla. Their village had been struck by an epidemic of viral fever. One of the riders, named Dhenuka, was the son of the Isla village chief. They were looking for Lady Roshni. Chief of Saraya was surprised. Dhenuka was famous for his uncouth behavior. He met Roshni for the first time today. The Sarayu chief informed that Lady Roshni has ridden out for Ayodhya. Dhenuka took the information, spurred his horse, and left. Roshni and her attendants were an hour's ride from Ayodhya. They have stopped near the banks of Sarayu for some rest. All of a sudden, he heard a male voice asking, "Can I help you, my lady?" At first, she didn't recognize this man, but soon she realized this was Dhenuka. Roshni thanked him and said, "That's all right, Dhenuka. The horses needed some rest, and I hope my assistants explained to you how to administer the medicine to your people." Dhenuka smiled and said, "Yes, they have." Roshni was feeling uneasy. Her gut instinct told her she must leave right now. So she stood up and started walking up to her horse. Dhenuka immediately jumped off his own and held Roshni by her hand and said, "What's the rush, my lady?" Roshni shoved him off and retreated. Roshni was terrified. She could feel a chill down her spine. So she fumbled, I helped your people." Dhenuka grinned and said, "Oh, I know, but I'm hoping you can help me too." Roshni suddenly turned and started running. 3 men took off after her and caught her up. One of them slapped her hard and her lips started bleeding. The other man twisted her hand brutally behind her back. Dhenuka caressed her face and said, A noble woman. This is going to be fun." And the gang burst out laughing. Lakshman was rushing towards Ram's office and screaming, "Dada!" Ram was poured over with lots of paperwork. He didn't raise his eyes and was expecting some peace and quiet. Casually, he asked Lakshman, "What's the matter now, Lakshman?" Lakshman was choking with emotion. Ram then saw that there were tears in his eyes. So he stood up and asked, "What happened?" "Dada, Roshni Didi." "What happened to Roshni?" said Ram as he sprang from his chair. "Where is she?" And that was the end of chapter 12. To know what will happen next, keep coming back.